Are we alone in the universe? We come from a worldview that says, no, you're not alone. There is a immeasurably vast, conscious, transcendent, benevolent being outside of time and space who cares about you. Welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Jason and this is Rachel. I hope you enjoyed our last episode that had my daughter Leia as a special guest star. I am back in the co-host seat, however you want to put that. And tonight we are going to be talking about a subject that I find infinitely fascinating, space, and why that fascinates us as people. And speaking of fascinating space, you may notice some changes have happened around us. Do you want to let them know what we're talking about?
Well, you indulged my love of redecorating. We repainted our living
Endured,
room.
indulged. It's,
And yeah, it's more like enduring.
well,
Yeah, repainted, did a little bit of rearranging of furniture and artwork and that kind of stuff. So just freshened up my space.
I think I want to make a confession. I think I make a bigger deal of it, of the imposition of it, than it really is. To be honest, it's what you love. So
Oh,
it makes me happy that you're happy. I think the end result and your happiness is what I like. The middle part's kind of like,
I enjoy refreshing, but it's also just a matter of this is my 24/7 place. You know, being a stay-at-home mom, I don't get to see a lot of the changing of scenery and people that you get in your job, just going out and seeing new things every day. So it's nice to be able to from time to time change the place that I exist in and refresh it and make it look pretty, new, different. So I think probably most stay-at-home moms could relate to that. It's nice to be able to change up from time to time. And paint is relatively cheap, so it's a fun thing to do.
I was trying to hold back a sneeze.
It's
I
been
didn't sneeze, so I'm think we can leave that. We can leave that in there. Um,
it's been a couple of weeks since we've recorded. So we've changed the space, but also had some sickness. And yeah, if you notice the low, gravelly voice
the
on
low
Jason, he's
voice. I sound
recovering.
like a Lurch from Adam's Family, I think. There's so many things I think I sound like, and I try to do their voices, and Rachel's like, I don't hear it. Like I do Darth Vader, and to talk about space, I do Darth Vader, and I think, oh, it sounds like Darth Vader, and she's like, I don't hear it, and she's probably right. I'm hearing it.
Mm.
When you do sound, you're hearing it from your own skeleton, your own chest. That's why when you record yourself, it sounds different than you think your voice sounds because you're hearing outside yourself. When you do your own voice, you're hearing it inside your. Fun fact, you're hearing it amplified through your own skeleton.
Okay. And with that,
Fun fact,
how about we get into the topic for today?
well, space is a big topic, and I can give you a quote from no, I can give you a quote from a favorite author of mine. Space is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemists, but that's just peanuts to space. That was Mr. Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I recommend it, whether you're a person of faith or not. I mean, Douglas Adams, of course, is an avowed atheist. He's passed away. It still is a absolutely hilarious series and doesn't take anything seriously, but also plays with the concept of space and things like that. That's not the book that I'm choosing tonight,
Well,
the series to be the
that's
subject. But
just interesting, real quick. Like,
okay, shoot.
favorite books about space. real quick,
Yes.
because I think mine is going to be shorter than
Well,
yours.
I don't know yours, and so I want to hear it. Because I
Okay.
already, yeah.
All right. We already talked about I got into Star Wars books when I was young.
Mm.
I've also read some Star Trek books, and I like the TV series better than the Star Trek books. Star Wars books, they can hold their own. I haven't
You
I
liked
didn't
the Star Trek books better. No, you like the
No, I liked
series.
the TV series better than I liked the Star Trek books,
Why,
which
why was
is
that?
odd. Like
Why is
most
that?
of the time I say books are better than movies. I
Because they're not novelizations. They're like offshoots or side stories, right?
Right. I just
Like,
felt like they didn't add more to the concept from my perspective. I felt like the TV series, like the different ones that I've watched, were just well done. They were interesting, and like Star Wars books, I felt like they really added to the story and the history behind the Star Wars universe. And I just didn't feel like the Star Trek books that I read did that for me.
yeah.
They didn't really enhance anything. I felt like just watching the series and the episodes was more fun than reading the books. Which, yeah, again, that's not
Star
okay.
Trek,
So
yeah, go
anyway,
ahead. Go ahead.
okay. So Star Trek, Star Wars,
Mm,
Ender's Game,
mm.
Based Out of Space. I really liked Ender's Game series.
That had some, what I would call, you're familiar with hard science fiction where it's more science based. And so Ender's Game, I think Orson Scott Card actually did base some stuff out of how alien cultures would actually be very incomprehensible. Well, with respect to the sequels, go ahead. With the
Yeah.
creature types and stuff like that.
Let's see. Off the top of my head, C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy.
I'm starting to read that, but it doesn't start off in space yet. I'm not to that point yet. I just started it.
Yeah, you'll get there. Those are fantastic. Paralandra, the second one, top notch.
It leaves the other one.
I
It
felt like that one
notches it
was,
up.
yeah, I felt like that one was better than the first one.
Hmm.
But they're so unique and interesting, and yeah, those are kind of mind benders. Just they're a completely different type of space genre, I think. I have read a few other, like, off of Kindle Unlimited that were based out of space.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing really that I've read off of Kindle Unlimited that was a space-based book was really gripping. Like, I
The
feel
big
like
name
there's
authors don't. I hate to say
yeah,
this. A lot of the bigger name authors, Poole Anderson, Piers Anthony,
feel
they
like
don't let their stuff get put on Kindle Unlimited.
yeah. I feel
They
like you
have
have
deals with the
to
bigger
do
publishing companies.
space well to do it. Like,
There are
I
plenty of
started reading a
authors.
few
I'm not
weeks
there
ago.
yet.
I started reading a few weeks ago
Yeah.
a cozy space mystery that was off Kindle Unlimited. It was awful.
I have a feeling
Like,
that space is just part of the set dressing, and it's
I'm
not
like,
like
I'm
part of the
sorry. If you're
story.
going to do space, you should do space well. I mean, Dune is based in space. Like, there's
I
just
read Dune. I
so
read Dune for the
many.
first time last year. Even after I've seen both the movies plus the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, and I had never read the book. I know
Mm.
that's wrong, but I finally read it, and it was something.
If you're going
It's
to
a
do
lot of food for thought.
space,
Yeah.
you have to handle it well. And I just don't think you can do a cozy space mystery from a just kind of small
That seems like it
indie
was just a paint job
writer.
of space. Like they just went,
Yeah.
cozy mystery. How can I make this different than the rest? Oh, let me just
I
paint job.
and I picked it up going, I think that this could be really interesting. I mean, space, sure, I love space. I like cozy books. I like mysteries.
It checked all your boxes so
Yeah.
far, yeah.
And got like literally 3 chapters in and went, I can't do it.
No.
I just no. Maybe I should have stuck with it a little bit longer, but I jumped to another book, and that is that. So
I will tell you, most people would say, hey, Dune is a space book. It's actually less space than it is, because it's mostly set on Arrakis, at least.
yeah,
So it's about
but you do
governments and ecologies,
deal
but we can
with
move on. Yeah.
the whole concept of different planets and the space travel, and the traveling through space is a big
And they
part of
can't,
the story.
they can't travel through space without this spice that allows the guild
Right.
navigators to fold space. So basically, it is seen as a resource. Space is it's almost like if you destroy all the roads, how do you
Mhm.
travel from country to country? And
I
so it's
mean,
very
there's a lot of books that, I would consider books about space that are set on different planets. But that's one of the things that is interesting to me about the concept of space is the fact that you're going from planet to planet. You're seeing not just the actual traveling, the whole concept of a spaceship and what that does, but you're getting to see new worlds, new species. It's just the whole discovering something completely different and other than Earth. And I mean, to me, one of probably the first type books that did that, would have been like Jules Verne. And that's not even talking about space necessarily in all of his, but going, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where you're actually going into what seems like a different world there, or Journey to the Center of the Earth, where again, you're not going into space, but it's this concept of seeing this completely different and
it's
other and
from
alien.
the Earth to the Moon.
Right.
And
Um,
funnily enough, on the podcast that me and William did, our first movie we ever did was basically a adaptation from the Earth to the Moon. And the last episode we did before we went on hiatus was basically mankind getting in a rocket and leaving because a planet or star was going to hit Earth. So, so people leaving Earth in a rocket to go somewhere else, either because we were interested in exploration or exploitation, and which we'll talk about, and or escape, like almost like Noah's Ark. So those two bookends is interesting that we're talking about this about space right now, and that's the same thing we talked about last. Yeah.
yeah. But okay, so we wanted to kind of discuss in particular what is it, because you know that we love space, but and science fiction and that kind of thing, but what is it that really is unique about books that deal with space? What is it that why are people drawn to that concept? What are they looking for? What does that provide to people that don't get in other type of books? You could go to a a fantasy, you could go to a historical novel. What is it that draws people to space? What is that unique experience?
I can come at that from what drew us to even start writing stories about that. It comes from that need to see what's over the next horizon. This is a human thing. People are always looking at, well, where we're at, the seasons change. We need to move to this ground to follow the herds to get better food. We have needs to move around. And then eventually, when we started building civilization and we started, setting in one spot, then you had the whole thing about, well, there's this other country, this other place that we could trade with. Well, let me find a route. So it's this expansion outwards, and it's the next iteration of that, because the first iteration of that is let's go across the ocean. Let's find a trade route so we can or an island that we can plant our flag on, which I have issues with that. Yeah, and it's still happening. It seems to be, and there's also a faith-based whatever initiative from that. I know in the word it says, in the Bible, it says, "Go ye therefore into all the world," but somehow mankind, I think, conflated civilization. Oh, civilized means that not only that they have to dress like us, look like us, believe like us, and that's not what Christ said. He said, "Believe on Him." It didn't say you have to change their dress or change their traditions. Their traditions will be folded into, the Holy Spirit will take care of that. That's what I think. But what ended up happening is people spread their civilization. They would see people as either somebody to, oh, let's civilize them or whatever. But that's called manifest destiny, right? Okay, let's fast forward to, we've always been interested in space, right? But then we had the space race where we actually put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and went, let's go up there. But it was a competition. Who did we have at the time? Russia. We were against Russia, and we were like, we got to get up into space first. So it was very much a competition kind of thing. Yes, there was a let's reach out, and there was this exploration, and the same thing that Christopher Columbus and people like that did, but they're doing it for space. They want to. It's exploration. They didn't even know exactly what's out there. We had telescopes. We had people like Kepler and Galileo who could speculate and use mathematics and physics and talk about the motion of these things they see in the sky. They're not just torches. Like it's not just a hemisphere. It's not just a big black sheet with little torches in it. They're actually spheres of gas, and they burn in the night. It's where speculation turned into actual solid science. And we were like, well, can we go there? How do we, and of course the Chinese had been developing rockets for years. And eventually we were like, how much energy, how much science does it take to get off the Earth's surface, to break gravity? Thank you, Sir Isaac Newton, to break gravity. Mm-hmm. So we're putting, so our exploration of it, as we're doing that, science fiction started changing. Early science fiction had alien beings, either, insectoid creatures. You remember H.G. Wells? Mm-hmm. Insectoid creatures on the moon. And as we got further out, we went, well, wait a minute. The moon is pretty lifeless, right? So we had to change some of those things as we went. Our science fiction changed. So our alien races and things like that started being on planets a lot farther out, because as we looked out there, we went, I don't think there's life on these planets.
Would you consider books about aliens coming to Earth as space-themed books, or are we only considering books or movies that take us off planet as space?
I think space and space travel makes them more space. Yeah,
space.
And honestly, a lot of the early science fiction, even in like the late 1700s, sometimes you would have these voyages in a airship. It'd be like a regular old sail ship that suddenly had magical powers. Now it's sailing out into space. So, it became another form of fantasy. And as science got more grounded, then science fiction caught up and went, okay, well, so how do we still tell these fantastical stories, but have them grounded a little bit better?
Sorry, that was a bunny trail.
No, it's fine.
We should only have rocket trails.
Rocket trails, yeah.
no
contrails. So no. So, and that brings me. I want to just touch on this real quick, but the book series for tonight is by James S.A. Corey. It's called The Expanse, is the unofficial name, and I think I'm on 4 or 5. I don't remember which one I'm on. I heard that they go up to book 9, and so I'm like, interesting. But I first watched the series on Sci-Fi Channel, and I was fascinated by the fact that it used real science. I know that some of the stuff about it does have an alien civilization, and I go back and forth on aliens. We'll talk about that later. But for the most part, what we have to deal with in the future is that people are people, and try as we might to unify. Let's unify and reach out to the stars. We reach out to the stars, and then we settle, and then we start infighting again. And so it becomes the same thing we deal with on Earth. So in a way, what is it? Who wrote Lamentations? Was it Solomon? No,
Jeremiah?
I think so. I think it's the Book of Lamentations, where he's basically saying nothing new under the sun, and he's saying all is vanity. It's kind of his heart cry out to God about how some things never change, and I think that's because the heart's a deceitful thing. Who can understand it? Who can fathom that? Is that we see this that when we are left with a world without God, we start. Christ is meant to bring us together, but we're breaking apart. And that's a fear that I have about our space travel. Is I always had this image that I got from Star Trek was that, and a lot of people still believe this, is that we would all come together, have a federation of planets first, and we just all get in spaceships and fly off. The thing that people don't discuss is first there was World War III, and after that they joined. Anyway, what I'm saying is I want us to unify, but I want it to be under the right circumstances. But I have a fear that even after we get into space, that we still that we can't you can't escape. What is it? What did Flint Lockwood say? You can't escape from your own feet.
Hmm.
You can't
So
escape from your
wherever
own heart.
humans go,
There they are.
there they are. Yeah. So the
Look in the
whole
mirror.
idea of like we take our issues and our problems wherever we go into space, and
You're just
they're
changing the
just
locale.
yeah. It's funny, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, even when we're imagining all of these alien cultures and things, and we try to put them as different as we possibly can from the our normals, right? We're still putting our own issues and politics and um philosophies into these things, and we're examining
Star
them.
Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's
The
one of the
the
things that Star
Klingons, the
Trek does.
Ferengi. People say the Ferengi represent capitalism unchecked, and that the Klingons are kind of this honor-based society that's almost samurai in a way. That warfare
It really
focused.
was a
It's
way to examine politics and religion and philosophy from a different perspective, because you're trying to put our things into this other world and see if they still are valid. Are they still, do they still hold up? When you take and examine it from an alien perspective, is there still truth there in it? Like that's,
what was the
I
name of
think, the
the
biggest thing that Star Trek does,
what
right?
was the name of the yes? And but I think the old complaint that some people had about Star Trek was it was just people with nose bumps. Like they'd have a little nose bump going down there. They look completely like us. So they had to come up with a reason why in universe. But what I was thinking about when you said is you mentioned Ender's Game,
Hmm.
and I said the sequel. When there like a sequel to there was this
Like a spin-off series, or
maybe
yeah, the it's the Shadow,
what was the name? Well, what was the name of
Ender
it
Shadow.
was the name of the alien race that was so incomprehensible, and what they did was they got involved with their way of doing things, like they killed some creature, and they're like, oh, this is barbaric, and it's just the way they were. What
The
was it?
sad thing is
Not
I
the
can't,
buggers,
the
the
piggies.
piggies.
But that's the slang name for them. That's
Yeah,
not the
that's not their name.
actual name.
Sorry,
They
that's
literally,
that's rude of me.
they thought that it was barbaric that they would take and like they would actually splay them open, but it was the way that they introduced them to their next life, that like a tree grew out of them, out of their bodies, and they had a sentience and a consciousness in, like, as this next being, but they had to actually be taken and cut apart and arranged like just so for them to be able to enter this next form of existence.
And they thought that they were
But
like
they thought that they
butchering.
were butchering their own species. Yeah, they thought that it was a barbaric act when it was actually like this is the way to get to the next
Do you remember what I
state
said
of being
about
for their
quote civilized societies going out and want to spread their civilization, and they would meet another group and they would say, "Oh, well, what they're doing there is savage,"
that
and
wasn't
not looking at them, in that
that
way.
wasn't a spin-off or anything, by the way. That was actually just that was either the second or the third book in
That's
the
what I was
Ender's
trying to say.
Game
I'm sorry, I was trying to
series.
say
So
sequel, but it didn't quite come out right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why I confused you a little bit, but that's okay. This is what this is. This is great for me, and I guess for a lot of humanity that share faith in God. I believe that space, it is real, and it represents a God that loves to create and loved to create and is vast and cannot be measured himself. And so here you have this universe that we say we can't hope to measure, as studies have borne this out, is the universe is not infinite. And of course, people joke around human stupidity is. Space is not infinite. It had a beginning. The universe had a beginning,
and it'll have an end.
and it'll have an end. And there's a rate of expansion. There's a speed of that expansion because there is width between stellar distances. So,
Put your notes to the camera.
oh, sorry. That's okay. We're humans. We're not robots. I have notes. But I talked about manifest destiny. One big thing, and this is something that if you want to take away something personal, and to get personal with you, our viewers, is one question that we've been asking for the longest time is, are we alone in the universe? But many times that question comes from agnostics and atheists more so than Christians, because we come from a worldview that says, no, you're not alone. There is a immeasurably vast, conscious, transcendent, ultimately benevolent being outside of time and space who cares about you and wants to have a relationship with you. Now, if I said that was an alien being named Blorp or something, you'd be like, oh, wow. If I said God, you get, up in arms. Well, no, it's God. Surprise. But the question, are we alone? We're still seeking that out today. There are huge arrays of radio telescopes sending out signals, trying to catch signals, trying to just listening. I was driving, listening to the radio earlier today, and there was a guy on the public channel, and he was talking about he left his previous study to look into the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI. And people said, "Oh, you're silly. Why are you doing that?" Because you're basically listening and looking out there for some hope that you're going to find some item, something that does that look like it's natural, or it could be an artifact or something like that, or is it some signal from something? And so I think that there's something in us that wants that seeks community, and we look at each other and we think, is there another community? Is there something else? And I think that's just a heart cry of all humanity. And I think when we deny that, we can cause issue within ourselves. It's when you isolate. And I appreciate what they're doing, and hey, keep going. But I'm of the mind that, and this is, disagree with me if you want, but I believe the earth is precious. I believe, like many scientists, there are many scientists who are agnostic and atheist, or even kind of nervous about saying it, but the words finely tuned out of their mouth. The conditions on earth are quite precious. And I could talk for hours on how the conditions are, even in our solar system. I believe that our life here is precious. And yes, there's more creation to behold, not just with the James Webb telescope or other telescopes or things like that, to just look out. We're not comfortable with just looking out. We want to go out. But the question is, space can be dangerous. Let's use the minds God gave us, and let's not take the problems that we've created here and bring them with us. Hopefully let's see space as a place to explore, not a place to escape to, as we let this world that we've been given stewardship of by God, crumble into garbage.
I think that to me is one of the most I think that's one of the most interesting things about space is, anytime that you have something based here on Earth, like you can get, like if you go out on the ocean or whatever, right? You're in a place where it's dangerous, where you could very easily, your boat messes up
Storm,
and yeah, a storm, whatever.
resources,
Yeah,
food,
and you're completely lost, right?
navigation.
But you still have oxygen. you know, it's
Yeah.
like if you go in a submarine and you go underwater and you take, you're putting humans in an environment where they don't have what they need to sustain life, right?
Yes.
But there's still one of those things where it's like there's a hope because you go underwater, sure, it's dangerous, but you can come up and it's not that far to get to where you actually have what you need for to sustain life, where you can find oxygen, you can find food, you can find, some form of drinkable water. I mean, that's probably the thing that's the scariest about being in the ocean is like not having drinkable water. You're
What was that?
surrounded by
What was
water,
that
but there's
quote?
none to drink.
Yeah. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. I
Right.
can't remember where that was from,
But
but
when you take and put humans in space, you're taking us away from everything necessary for human survival. You're taking us away from oxygen. You're taking us away from water. You're taking us away from food. You're taking us away from warmth, even. You're putting us into a completely cold, like everything necessary to sustain human life, you're taking away from us. And we only have what we can bring with us.
I never really thought about that, because on ships like the Millennium Falcon, let's use the
Mhm.
fantasy type stuff, Millennium Falcon or the Enterprise, they talk about, oh, we're having environmental issues or whatever. Well, um, but they fix them, and it's not too big a deal unless you have a hull breach. What's called a hull breach. But Expanse really the series opened my mind about how critical things are. There is a group of people called Belters, and they live and work in space only.
Mhm.
They don't have a world to call their own. It's these ships or these stations, and that's it. Or ships that travel back and forth. They're very nomadic, or in some ways. And it makes a big point that air recyclers,
Mhm.
food recyclers are critical. If your air recycling is not to the right levels, you have people that are breathing in carbon dioxide back in, and if something goes wrong, and even the spin of the stations have to be a certain way to keep right. Because what if you have other people come from other areas to trade with? They've got to have gravity that, kind of works with them too.
We think about the thing that
You want a
is,
job, you got a job
yeah.
working air
I mean,
recycling.
when you think about sci-fi, a lot of times people think, oh, the aliens, but the very fact that it's an alien environment that is the most alien thing for humans is that's where the true terror of taking, and putting humans in space comes from, is that we're in this, I mean, where you don't have anything necessary for your survival. So Yeah, I mean, just the psychology behind that is fascinating to me. Of taking and putting us into an environment that's so completely other, and what that does to the human psychology. I think that, there's so many different aspects of space travel and books that take us into that. But to me, like, just when you take a human out of their natural environment and put them into a completely other situation, what that does, all of the psychology that's wrapped into that
It's your
is,
crew too.
yeah,
I noticed that
it's fascinating.
whenever somebody wasn't pulling their weight on one of these ships and they were like, well, whatever, and they're like, and they were disciplined heavily or they're kicked off the ship or something, because if you don't pull your weight, if you don't do what you need to do, and so it
Only time you
you
get worse
depend.
is when you play with a group of gamers and you let down your group.
Oh, so you do take that label of gamer. Oh yeah. I always used to tease her about the games that she plays, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not really.
Phone
I don't play
games.
video games. I don't play video games. If it
I
has
don't
a
play video games. I
if
play
it
phone
I
games.
sent you a
There's a
video. If it
difference.
has a screen, it has points. It's a video game. But anyway,
Mm.
even a quiz. No, no, I'm kidding. That's an inside joke. That's okay. But yeah, in some ways, some of those ships and the best ships, especially the Rocinante, which is the main ship that am fans of in the series, is they think of themselves like a family. So they're kind of iffy about letting a new person come on. I mean, they're like, I don't know,
Because
because you're putting your life in their hands. Yeah.
one new person you're not sure of, yeah, could literally be life or death. There's not
Yeah.
anything here on earth where literally bringing one person into your normal existence is that pivotal.
I
Uh,
think, yeah. And because people don't fly in airplanes all the time. So you don't think
yeah.
about, hey, this air traffic controller had a little too much
But
drink the night
even
before or
then,
something like that.
like literally, not
This is even more
every
so.
not every air disaster ends in death.
Yeah.
There's still a hope for survival. You have parachutes, people survive crash landings. Is it fun? Can you get hurt? Sure. Do you want to have that happen? Obviously not. But it's not like literally, it's not that extreme of a risk.
What was that? There's one female character that she had, she was, had to get out. And so, of the ship. And so she leaps, she, gets launched into outer space without a suit.
Oh, yeah.
And she gets to the other side. And it's no picnic. I mean, it takes a long time to recover for her. So and here's the other part of that too is okay, let's say we were to explore and find some, I say alien or some unknown planet. Well, they even, they think they're discovering something and going, "Ooh, well, we could, colonize this place." Well, they have a whole issue with this, not like a bacterium that gets into the liquid of their tear ducts or something, and there's a whole disease or something that starts going rampant. So started off very, very, gung ho about space and how magical it was, and then we went to kind of pessimistic. I didn't want to go that way, but
But that's the thing.
let's be realistic and clear
Space,
eyed about it.
it can be all of those things. You have, you know, some very lighthearted, you have some very heavy, you have the political, you have the philosophical, you have just the like, there's so many different ways that space travel has gone. And I think that's one of the things that is really, it's universally appealing, because you can take and you can get really deep and you can get really lighthearted and like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where
Or
you're just
Guardians of the
having fun.
Galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. But then you can go, to Expanse, and how desperate that situation is and how really serious it is. Like, it just depends on
And how we
how.
need each other.
Right.
And you need to find somebody that you care about and fight for them. Because ultimately that's what those stories are about. They're,
But I do like the thought of just, you know, everywhere that we humans go, even if it's to space, we're still dealing with humanity. And I don't think that we can escape that.
and we need God
Yeah.
and we need each other. We need God and we
Yeah.
need each other in that order. Space is the final frontier. And these are the voyages of the Weatherford Daze. No, I'm just kidding. But while you were saying that, I said, well, I need to think about something optimistic. And so I thought of at the end of most of the Star Trek movies, they'll be like, "Where to, Captain?" And he goes, "Out there," you know, or whatever. And then you see it shoot off, and they play the music, and you're just like, "Yeah." And even the newer
Because
Star Trek series, the newest ones, which they
it
are
represents
they're kind of
hope.
they're still pessimistic. The
But
old stuff is still
yet
so
it
hopeful.
still represents hope. On to the next discovery, on to the next adventure. Because humans have always pushed on to the next thing. And no matter how many times we encounter things that are just horrific, right? We still find things that are beautiful in the new. Just like we sit here and go, I'm going to change up my decor and, right?
A change of scenery.
A change of scenery, a change of decor, finding something new to look at on the day to day. We do that with the space stuff. It's still that same mindset of like,
Let's go to Mars and
I'm
change some
gonna wake
decor
up.
there. It's a little
No, but
it's a little too it's too orange and pinkish.
but just
Let's
like
bring
we
some
get up and we
florals into that.
see the new sunset, right? And the new sunrise, the new sunset. It's seeing something new in the day and finding hope that even though we know there's going to be hardship, there's going to be disaster a lot of times, there's going to be, hard. We wake up every day and we go, you know what? There's something new and there's something beautiful to be discovered in this day. It's that indomitable human adventure spirit that we have, that we want to go explore. And when we got to the end of the world, for a while it was like, oh, we're going to go west
Yeah.
and we're going to explore, and going
We
across
hit the
the
Pacific,
oceans,
yeah,
and
and then get further out, yeah.
and then we went, you know what?
What's next?
Yeah, the final frontier, space. Let's go and
We
see.
still
And even
the
though we,
oceans are a
yeah,
frontier too. There's ocean area that mankind has not touched, and I hope we don't touch it because I think
that's
we're
the
gonna
thing.
mess it up.
If
Go
we
ahead.
get there in real life or not, we get there in our imaginations and we explore and we push. How far can we take humanity? And what can we discover about ourselves in every new place that we come to?
But when you push with an expectation, push with a with stewardship and not exploitation. Expectation,
Yeah.
but not exploitation. Because to use that alliteration, I know that we're not really doing anything huge with space right now. I know that we just rescued 2 astronauts, but what? So you're like, Jason, what can I do practically in my life right now with regard to my life and faith? All right, If you got kids, there's a planetarium nearby. Take them to the planetarium. If there's no planetarium nearby, find an area that's far enough from the city, wherever you're at, that you're going to get away from light pollution. Wait till it's really late at night. Make sure it's not on a school night. Look up. Look at the stars. If you can, there's different apps you can use for your phone that tell you what the constellations are, and you can look up and move your phone around, and you can see those things. I did that with the kids when they were little. I think one time, just once. Or if it's daytime and you've got sunglasses on, look up at the sun for just a moment and just realize how big it is, how immense it is, and realize there are stars out there, both cooler and hotter, that are immeasurably bigger than that. And if God cares about me in that insignificant state, maybe I'm all right in God's eyes. Look at nature. Have a newfound mental exploration. Give into your inner child. Go grab a leaf, look at it, experience with the wonder of a child. Some people don't look up at the stars enough. They're just looking down at their feet or looking down at what their own life has for them. That's fine. But give yourself that chance to dream a little bit. Look at nature. Go take a walk and go, God made this. So he could go, hey, check this out. Look what I did. And maybe you'll see me in it.
And to borrow a phrase from our pastor, one of the things that he says all the time, our God is a star-breathing
God.
Like, that's the thing, no matter how far we go into space, God is there. He is bigger than all of it. We look at how seemingly infinite space is. Our God created space. He breathed the stars into existence.
Space is insanely big. Remember the quote from Douglas Adams, and it's not even in God's, it's in God's hand. It's so tiny.
But you think about, we sit here and we think about how everywhere that we go and we explore into space, we bring our human, our humanity into it and all of the human issues. But in reality, those hold up and they're true because God is true, because what he put here and the principles that he placed that are true here on earth are going to be true everywhere that God created. That love,
self-sacrifice, putting others above yourself.
Yeah. That kindness,
respect for others.
Those are things that, every time that that Star Trek took us and, dreamed up a new civilization and a new race, you have those basic human principles that you can always fall back on and always rely on that are going to hold up, that are going to be true. And that's because what God created is true and holds up no matter what reality you put it into, no matter what, we can imagine. God's principles are there.
That's a good bow to put on that, because it got real, bringing it all together. Just keep on imagining and keep on reading. Also, think about what you can do in your own life to make space for God. And you made space for us today on this episode, so thank you. Thanks for joining us today. We could go on for a lot longer about these subjects. We could save that for another episode. Let those things marinate. Live long and prosper. Bye.
Oh,